Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Anurikha Chari Wagh, Assistant Professor, Department of Sociology, Savitribai Phule, Pune University. I am coordinating the paper on sociology in India. The module that we are going to discuss today is Language Debate in India. This module has been written by Priyanka Gupta, Assistant Professor, Department of Sociology, KC College of Arts and Commerce and Science, University of Mumbai. In this module, what we intend to discuss is try to understand language as a debate in terms of its manifestations, especially in terms with its relationship with identity, politics, and this whole notion of the language diversity and the challenge it presents to the whole idea of unity and diversity in India. Introduction. Linguistic pluralism in India. Language means a system of mutually intelligible vocal symbols by which the members of a society communicate. Written language is a special kind of language. A dialect is a speech system of regionally or socially defined groups marked by a combination of shared linguistic features. In a broader sense, language plays an essential role in constructing a sense of identity. It serves as a medium of communication and expression of and for the masses, thereby instilling in them a sense of belongingness and oneness. India is one such country which is home to more than 1 billion population comprising of numerous major and minority communities with its own ethnocentric and distinctive profiles of spoken and written languages. On record, there are approximately 400 languages and more than 300 dialects spoken across 29 states and 7 union territories of India. According to the 2001 Linguistic Survey Census Data Report records approximately 6,661 mother tongues, of which Hindi is a predominant language spoken by about 41% of the population, followed by Bengali, Telugu, Marathi and Tamil. However, despite such linguistic multifariousness, there exists a strong relationship between language and power. It is important to deconstruct facts of how language and power reciprocally reproduce different magnitude and social hierarchy, political power, and cultural and economic inequalities. As Sarangi argues that in order to gain insights into the problematic language question in India, we need to deeply probe into the structures of relationship between language, history, culture, ideology, power, and economy and politics. In this module, we will explore many debates on the issue of linguistic diversity in India. Likewise, how the politics of language plays an important role in shaping people's identities in the Indian heartland. We will try and explore the strong interlinkages between language and power that leads to nationwide linguistics, regional conflicts, and mass-based social movements. We will also discuss how various linguistic groups in contemporary India demonstrate demands to acknowledge their linguistic uniqueness nationally as a matter of political and social privilege. Language and identity politics in India. India is most famous for its social mosaic of diverse religious, linguistic, and ethnic heterogeneities. This means diversity also becomes a base of multiple socio-cultural and political identities, and that has its roots in gender politics, sexual politics, ethnic politics, and religious interpretations, and sometimes a combination of one another. The question we need to ask is how have we successfully as a nation state been able to survive with such diversity? More so, this question holds much relevance because when in the past attempts to homogenize diverse cultural practices in the name of national integration failed or cultural assimilation have failed, it has often led to revolutionary revolts and agitations. Language has also been an attention-grabbing source of identity for many in Indian society. Besides being a channel of communication, language has two major roles in society. It influences distribution of power and wealth, particularly in an underliterate society. It also acts as an emotional and cultural cement for the social impact, argues Ahire. In the Indian context, language-related issues have always remained under-examined and has often been relegated to the margins, especially in the process of nation building. For this reason, let us first briefly discuss the relationship between language and identity politics in India. Identity politics is said to signify a wide range of political activity and theorizing founded on shared experiences of injustice of members of certain groups. It essentially means a demand for an identity based on differences rather than equality. As a political activity, it is focused to signify a body of political underpinnings to attempt recovery of social groups striving for a sense of selfhood which for a long has been subjected to politics of exclusion and disintegration. Identity politics thus attempts to attain empowerment, representation and recognition of social groups by asserting the very same markers that distinguished and differentiated them from others and utilize those markers as an assertion of selfhood and identity based on difference rather than equality. Language is one such essential source of attaining a distinguished sense of selfhood. Language can hardly be treated as a homogeneous entity. Its means are much more than a simple means of communication. It fundamentally contributes to the formation of social and political identities of similar people belonging to different communities. However, we must also understand that it may not always necessarily unite people. Language successfully divides people as much as it unites. As part of the macro dimension of the society, language plays a central role in defining people's national, subnational and group identity. Linguistic conflict and language movements in India. In the United States of America, one of the popular approaches to understand multiculturalism and diversity is through the salad bowl view, which means creating a national identity by recognizing diversities as central pressure points that promote and create national integration. 2. Reliance on democracy to resolve conflicts, which means upholding the interest of the masses in a true democratic manner and giving them the right to express and accept their demands. In the Indian context, the question of language conflict was handled with similar approaches and strategies. Realistically, these strategies have failed miserably to tackle the problem of language policy in India. In principle, despite such policies for inclusion of linguistic minorities, some groups remain discontented, either because their distinctiveness is not recognized or if recognized, not given equal treatment. If multiculturalness is a notable fact in India and linguistic diversity is boasted as a part of cultural heritage, then why is it that in the past as well as today, the state continues to deal with language as an obstacle in its successful functioning? What is the basis of emergence of language movements in India? The linguistic movement in India dates back to the 19th century of the pre-colonial era in Orissa, present-day Odisha. It is one of the best examples to understand the formation of states on linguistic bias in pre-independent India. Language provided the base for growing nationalist movement in Orissa during this period. The common people, particularly the intelligentsia, registered Oriya being replaced or dominated by other languages like Bengali, Telugu and Hindi. The Orissa intelligentsia strove for a regional, linguistic and cultural identity for themselves. Finally, in the year 1936, the Orissa state came into being under the Orissa province as the first Indian state formed on linguistic basis due to the efforts of Madhusudan Das. At this point, it is important to understand the social and political reasons that led to linguistic conflicts and movements. King raises a very prominent question. What are the components that lead to language conflicts and what makes language a dominating political concern? He offers us the following indexes that may lead to a language-based conflict across the world. The existence of more than one language or dialect competing for political, economic and cultural space often leads to conflict. Thus, the more the number of languages, the greater is the likelihood of language becoming a worrisome political issue for that nation state. In fact, this is particularly true for countries which are grappling with the question of what the national language should be. 2. There must be social difference that correlate with language. These social differences include caste in general, caste in particular, and perhaps most generally ethnicity. In contemporary usage, it is most conveniently used elastic cover term for anything that sets one segment of the society apart from the other. When language is linked to that otherness as a badge of iconic identification, then we have located a potential focal point of linguistic conflict. Third, there is a strong correlation between language and economic prosperity. While well-to-do countries like Belgium can have major language problems normally, the generalization holds that the better off country, the greater livelihood that language will not be a major political problem. Lastly, history and awareness of history are peculiarly relevant to the argumentation of linguistic conflict. If a culture is inclined to remember slights from the past, those slights easily grow into language grievances. After independence, the framers of the Indian Constitution had a back-breaking task to perform, the task of ensuring that linguistic diversity is withheld in Constitutional Assembly. For this purpose, they had put together a constitution that not only preserved political unity but also acknowledged and promoted cultural and linguistic diversity. Agnihotri argues that Constitutional Assembly of Independent India, which held its first meeting in 1946 and last in 1950, poorly failed in understanding the complex issue of language right from its genesis, particularly when they tenaciously debated about the language question only in terms of language of the judiciary, national or official language, languages to be recognized in the 8th schedule, linguistic, etc. They hardly appreciated multilingualism as something which essentially constituted by the essence of India and was characterized by fluidity of this linguistic and ethnic diversity, and cannot be represented by forming linguistic state suggesting each area may have only one single medium of instruction. Much of the debates on the linguistic issues in the assembly centered on the linguistic division of India, which the Nehruvian government never fully rejected. Thus, in order to tackle with the issue of linguistic diversity, the Constitutional Assembly made the following constitutional provisions. The 8th schedule enclosed a list of languages and placed it in the 8th schedule of it. Initially, this schedule consisted of 14 languages and today it consists of 22. These languages enjoy the same official status including English. At the time the constitution was enacted, inclusion in this list meant that language was entitled to representation on the official languages commission and that the language would be one of the bases that would be drawn upon to enrich Hindi, the official language of the Union. However, with time the Government of India has come under obligation to take these measures for the development of these languages such as they grow rapidly in richness and become an effective means of communicating modern languages. Of these languages are Assamese, Bengali, Gujarati, Hindi, Kannada, Kashmiri, Konkani, Malayalam, Manipuri, Marathi, Nepali, Oriya, Punjabi, Sanskrit, Sindhi, Tamil, Telugu, Urdu, Bodo, Santhali, Maithili and Dogri. Of these, 14 were initially included in the constitution and later on other languages were included. At present, there are demands for the inclusion of 38 more languages in the 8th schedule. Some of them are Angika, Banjara, Bazikia, Bhojpuri, Gujar, Karbi, Khasi, Kurak, Sambalpuri and Tulu. State Reorganization Act 1956. On December 15, 1952, the 58-day fast of the linguistic state activist Poti Sri Ramalu culminated dramatically in his death in the city of Madras, today known as Chennai. His fast unto death protest demanded the formation of a separate Telugu-speaking administrative territory within the newly independent India, with Madras city as its capital. His dissatisfaction with the arbitrary administrative regions established under the British colonial rule and inherited by the new nation after the departure of the colonial government in 1947 and his frustration with the marginalization of concerns raised by the speakers of Telugu within the existing multilingual state drew on the larger movement for a linguistically defined Telugu province launched 40 years earlier. Soon reports of violence, processions, destruction of railway property, stoppage of trains and looting began to circulate. Just 4 days later, in response to this widespread dismay, Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, read by journalists, politicians, historians alike as irrefutable evidence of the collective will of the people, by declaring the formation of new Telugu linguistic state within the Indian nation. The new state was to be known as Andhra state and was to be created from the uncontested Telugu-speaking district of the existing Madras state. 4 years later, additional Telugu-speaking districts from the neighboring state of Hyderabad were added and the name of the state was changed to Andhra Pradesh. Before independence in 1947, the Congress was committed to redrawing state boundaries to correspond with linguistics. After Sri Ramalu's death in August 1953, Nehru appointed the States Reorganization Commission with Justice Fazil Ali, K.M. Panikar and Kunzru as members to objectively examine the entire question of the reorganization of states in India. The SRC dwelled for nearly 2 years withstanding protests, agitations and violent clashes from the masses demanding statehood like Andhra Pradesh on linguistic grounds. However, the SRC surveyed the problems involved in redrawing state boundaries. It did view language as important, although by no means the sole other factor of such reorganization of the states. Other factors such as economic viability and geographic realities had to be taken into account as well. Finally, the Act came into effect on November 1, 1956 and state boundaries were reorganized and new states and union territories were created or dissolved. In regard to linguistic reorganization, along with the birth of Andhra Pradesh, some of the principal changes of 1956 were as follows. Mysore was enlarged by absorption of the Kannada-speaking areas of Hyderabad, Madras and Bombay. Bombay became a bilingual state, one of the largest in the Union, by adding 2 Marathi-speaking areas, Marathwada region of Hyderabad and Berar of the central province, and Berar along with Gujarati-speaking states of Saurashtra and Kutch. Central provinces were renamed Madhya Pradesh with 3 other Hindi-speaking states, Madhya Bharat, Vindhya Pradesh and Bhopal. With the committee's recommendation, the fourfold distribution of the states as provided under the original constitution was done away with, and it divided the country into 14 states and 6 union territories under the State Reorganization Act 1956. Since the late 19th century, language movements in India have raised issues of script reform, language purism, standardization of language for a dialect, Sanskritization and or Romanization of the script, and official recognition of a language. Important language issues in post-independent India. Sanskrit as a national language. The relationship between language and nationalism has always been a challenging one, particularly in post-colonial India when the struggle for national identity is dominated by Hindu-centric cultural practices. The discussion on Sanskrit draws our attention to the troubling linguistic undercurrents faced by India during the nationalization process. In October 1956, the Government of India decided to appoint a commission called the Sanskrit Commission to evaluate the status of Sanskrit in post-independent India. It also financed publications, cultural events and national-level broadcastings in order to promote Sanskrit as a national language. The report of the commission openly argued for a change in the pedagogical practices in schools to promote the study of Sanskrit as a part of cultural heritage of India, thereby urging the birth of a modern India without compromising with its ancient past. For the problem of linguistic division of state, the commission offered a solution of supplying the nation with a Sanskrit diet by making its teaching mandatory in school. The idea was by restoring Sanskrit back to its status, the nation too will be restored. The question we need to pose is that what pushed the custodians of the nation state to label an ancient language which is rarely spoken by the people as national language? What is the correlation between Sanskrit and nationalism? The answer lies in using Sanskrit to ensure citizenship to the people. As Agnihotri argues, the need to propose the use of Sanskrit as a national language arose out of some kind of misplaced patriotism and ignorance about language development. Although Nehru was in favor of all work being carried out in the Indian languages, he was also convinced that any language that loses contact with the masses dies over a period of time. He was in support of making English as a language of the masses over Sanskrit and appealed for making it more reachable to the masses, thereby breaking the English-speaking class elitist monopoly. In 2014, Narendra Modi-led BJP government has made fresh impositions by making Sanskrit compulsory in all CBSE schools of India, with the rationale of India losing its linguistic cultural heritage in the era of globalization to foreign languages like French and Spanish. This order by the HRD ministry was critiqued by various sections of the civil society and was seen as yet another attempt to enforce Hindu culture on the heterogeneous Indian population. English versus Hindi, the debate of official language of India. Drawing from Ghose, one could argue that language plays an important role in constructing narratives of nations, especially when a nation is free from colonial rule. While looking at the issue of language policy as a means of nation building, we often have conflicting views to address two contending groups: the proponents and opponents of English as a popular language of progressive India. One must comprehend the evolving and changing relationship among various social groups in India when it comes to issues of language politics. Going back in history, under the Nehruvian government, apart from several disagreements over linguistic states as mentioned above, there were serious disputes over the national language policy as well. The unresolved question of what should be the national language of India continues to haunt the Indian state till date. Should it be Hindi because we are a Hindu nation where Hindi speaking population is the largest, or should we continue with the colonial legacy and make English as a national mode of communication? Since 1980, Gandhi was in strong favor of Hindustani being the language of interaction with the colonialists. His rationale was that English-speaking Indian men have enslaved India, and he argued that until Hindi was given its national status, all talks on Swaraj were useless. Even Jawaharlal Nehru in 1937 wrote that though English would continue to play an important role, the masses could go culturally and educationally in their own languages. Dr. Ambedkar opposed the idea too by insisting to have no article for resolving language question, as he feared clashes among the masses if any one language based on majoritarianism was chosen over the others. Thus the language, especially the national language debate, became intense with each passing day. Though Nehru was in favor of Hindi, he himself was not a Hindi fanatic, as he was fairly comfortable with English as a language of communication for official purposes and did not want to expel it fully. Finally, after much contemplation and 3 years of debating, the assembly arrived at a compromise and national language was repealed replaced by official languages. 14 regional languages were given the status of official language of India along with Hindi and English and would continue as another official languages. This language policy was not well digested by other members of the assembly who were from the southern and eastern states of India. They expressed their disgust fearing Hindi imperialism in India, particularly knowing that in these states seeds of linguistic separation were already sown. The next debate about the constitution being in English or Hindi. Dr. Rajendra Prasad, the first president of India, wanted the constitution in Hindi as against English, which was rejected by Nehru as the translation of the constitution would be best under the guidance of expert translators, not by the members of the assembly. In 1955, the Official Languages Committee was appointed to speed up the work of changing over to Hindi as the only official language of the country. This led to agitating responses from South Indians as they feared that Hindi as a national language would bleak their chances of making it at the All India services. Finally, in 1963, Official Language Act was introduced in the constitution to accommodate the interest of all linguistic communities and to allay the fears of non-Hindi speaking states where English would remain the official language of India further than its 15 years tenure. Anti-Hindi movement in South India. In 1925, Periyar flagged the famous self-respect movement to categorically challenge and cast off Brahminic hegemonic practices in the South to uphold the interests of non-Brahmins in particular. In 1944, he renamed it Dravida Kazhagam with fresh objectives that included absolute rejection of everything related to North Indian culture that dominated over the South, like the Aryans, Hindi, Hinduism and Sanskrit. The anti-Hindi emotion was furthered with the demand of Dravidstan, a Tamilian land that would espouse Tamil language and cultural history in the political and social spheres. In 1937, after winning the elections in Madras Presidency, Indian National Congress leader Rajaji introduced Hindi language teaching in secondary schools of Madras. Soon he issued a government order making teaching of Hindi in more than 100 schools compulsory in his presidency. This was opposed by Periyar, who staged a statewide protest against such an order. The anti-Hindi movement demonstrated protest against the Brahmins as the protesters believed that the Brahmins were making Sanskrit and Hindi universal in the subcontinent by imposing it legally on the masses. The agitation was marked by black flag demonstrations, anti-Hindi conferences, besieging of schools teaching Hindi, long fast by Tamil-speaking population. According to the government records, by 1939, a total of 1,198 protesters were arrested for such anti-Hindi demonstrations, including women. Finally, in October 1940, the Madras provincial government was placed under government's rule and Periyar called off the agitation when the governor issued a press notice withdrawing the order of Hindi as a compulsory subject, making it optional instead. Once again in 1946, the anti-Hindi movement emerged with great magnitude in post-independent India when Congress government urged all the states to make Hindi compulsory in schools. In accordance to this order, the Congress government in the Madras presidency made Hindi mandatory from academic year 1948-49. This heightened the anti-Hindi sentiment and Periyar was at the forehead of the movement. After much agitation and resistance from the masses, the order was withdrawn and Hindi was made optional in the following academic year. In 1950, DMK was formed after the breakaway from Dravida Kazhagam under the leadership of Annadurai. He was a skillful orator and his appeal to the masses to promote Tamil language had far-reaching impacts. Over time, the DMK became a very popular party among the masses in Madras and it began to stage infinite protests and organize several anti-Hindi conferences to resist the imposition of Hindi language by the constitution. So much so that DMK observed 13 October 1957 as Anti-Hindi Day and challenged the rationale of numerical superiority of Hindi-speaking people in the country as the basis of it being chosen as national language. After the death of Nehru in 1964, fear gripped the followers of the anti-Hindi movement as the next Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri was strongly in favor of Hindi as a national language. In 1965, the state once again ordered the replacement of English into Hindi on 26 January. To this, several students' organizations, especially Tamil students' organizations, reacted violently and more than 30,000 students staged protests opposing this order. This clash went out of control and riots broke out in different parts of Tamil Nadu. Several agitators committed suicide by consuming poison and immolating themselves. As per records, nearly 500 people lost their lives in this movement. Under the Prime Ministership of Rajiv Gandhi, the new education policy was introduced which provided opening of Navodaya schools where Hindi would be compulsory. ADMK, opposed this compulsion, and as a result, Tamil Nadu is the only state in India that does not have a Navodaya school. The final glimpse of the anti-Hindi movement was seen in 2014 after BJP came to power. As stated in Business Line 2014, the BJP came out with an order saying that all government employees and officials across ministries, departments, corporations and banks having official accounts on social networking sites should use Hindi. This created a controversy whereby Tamil Nadu Chief Minister Jayalalitha argued that such a policy was against the Official Language Act. The order was later withdrawn after much contemplation by the government due to the political pressure exerted by other states. The impact of the anti-Hindi movement was tremendous. It helped in retaining the status of English as the official language of India. These agitations marked the beginning of an inclusive approach towards language planning by encouraging the use of bilingualism officially as well as restoring the language of the minorities. Hindi-Urdu controversy. The Hindi-Urdu controversy dates back to the 19th and the 20th century medieval Muslim invasions in India and the resulting synthesis of the Indo-Persian language that emerged, which came to be known as Urdu. However, sources claim that excessive Persianization of Hindi, which was originally the official language for both Hindus and Muslims, led to a drastic split of both communities. Further, with the coming of East India Company, Persian was replaced with English as the official language of India and other vernaculars. The Hindi-Urdu conflict in India was a byproduct of the Hindu-Muslim religious conflict in India. The divide and rule policy of the British further perpetuated the bitterness between the two communities. The Hindi Sahitya Sammelan and the establishment of the Banaras Hindu University were the basis of Hindi language movement against Urdu. Madan Mohan Malviya, the central figure of movement, was convinced of using classical Hindi and Sanskrit as a medium of instruction in schools and colleges. In 1968, a Hindi advocate, Babu Shiv Prasad, accused Muslim rulers of coercing Hindus into learning Persian. He denounced the British government, accusing them of destroying Hindu nationality by forcibly converting Hindus into semi-Mohammedans. He demanded the official language in court be made Hindi from Urdu because Urdu is a symbol of the Indo-Persian culture. Hence, when that culture was attacked in North India, Urdu became the center of focus. There were remarkable differences between both Urdu and Hindi scriptures, which made Hindi-Urdu controversy an intractable one. While both scripts had identical grammar and vocabularies, they focused and heightened the differences between Indo-Persian and Hindu cultures. Hence, the influence of Sanskrit and Arabic and Persian were poured separately into Hindi and Urdu, ignoring the overlapping discourses in everyday life. This official segregation resulted in a highly Sanskritized Hindi and highly Persianized Urdu, which aided the rivalry in Hindu and Indo-Persian cultures from each other. Linguistic regionalism in Maharashtra. Language plays an equally crucial role in the growth and promotion of regionalism in India. One of the best examples of linguistic regionalism is a struggle led by the Samyukta Maharashtra Samiti, which resulted in the creation of unified Maharashtra in May 1960. Although the Samiti leadership had talked about the development of Marathi language and culture and employment issues of Marathi-speaking people, they could not evolve a comprehensive agenda for the same. The Chief Minister of Unified Maharashtra, Yashwantrao Chauhan, spelled out his vision for the development of the state and development of Marathi language. He also expressed the need to run the administration of Maharashtra state in Marathi language instead of English. Chauhan established a number of relevant institutions such as Bhasha Sanchalay, Directorate of Languages, Sahityani Sanskruti Mandal, Board for Literature and Culture, Vishwakosh Nirmiti Mandal, Board for Marathi Encyclopedia, and Vidyapit Grantha Nirmiti Mandal, Board for Creation of University Level Reference Book. In 1966, against this background, the birth of Shiv Sena took place in Bombay in order to fight for the rights of Marathi-speaking people in Maharashtra, particularly in Bombay. The declining importance of Maharashtrians in the political economy of the city of Mumbai was a matter of serious concern even before the arrival of Shiv Sena. Through campaigns such as the campaign for Marathi signboards on shops and other establishments, or the campaign for renaming the city of Bombay as Mumbai, the campaign for the use of Marathi in the business of the government and the judiciary, the Shiv Sena strongly emphasized on the use of Marathi language in public spaces. In 2006, the Maharashtra Navnirman Sena (MNS) came into existence with a similar agenda. MNS was more violent in its approach, especially when in 2008 it physically abused many North Indian taxi drivers and auto rickshaw owners along with hawkers and food vendors, blaming them to be thriving at the cost of Marathi-speaking people living in erstwhile Bombay. For the same purpose, MNS Chief Raj Thackeray is facing a trial in the Court of Justice for causing such linguistic vandalism and almost breaking the city into riot-like situations. Breaking the English-speaking class hegemony. As Sheth rightly states, language debate must be situated in the contemporary politics of social change, whereby language issue lies more in the nationwide democratization of English as a preferred mode of communication than by simply being forced fully used as a hegemonic weapon by the political class represented by the selected elites of India. Post-independence, the English-speaking intelligentsia controlled the all India services and professions and were known to be the educational halves and dominated those who knew only regional languages. As products of colonial education, this section of population exercised a considerable level of elitism by representing the English-speaking class. It was the English language speaker versus the vernacular or those who spoke the regional bhasha. So along with class and caste line, English language also subsequently became relevant basis of stratification in India. If we analyze further, this language division was a cultural division too. As the English language class envisaged itself as English in taste, modern in approach and civilized in living, the non-English speaking and educational have-nots due to such discrimination increasingly began to be politically strengthened and mobilized themselves on grounds and further demanded replacement of English with regional languages. This demand, besides from being able to preserve the regional and ethnic culture, was also important to ensure preservation of jobs in government office, which would bring social and economic prosperity for the state. Language is closely related to culture and therefore to the customs of the people. Besides, a massive spread of education and growth of mass literacy can only occur through the medium of mother tongue. The Official Language Act was amended and three-language formula was introduced in 1968 in the National Policy of Resolution. It stated that education in schools of Hindi-speaking states must be provided in three languages, namely Hindi, English and one of the regional or local languages. And in non-Hindi-speaking states, schools should teach regional or local language, Hindi and English. It enables states to conduct public service examination in regional languages as well. This formula was suggested as an attempt to slow down the process of Hinduization of the South and non-Hindi-speaking states. They devised it in order to encourage and preserve linguistic diversity by providing linguistic minorities as a means to acquire link languages and also to guarantee them the right to education in their own mother tongue. Conclusion. According to a baseline survey of Indian languages in 2013 by the People's Linguistic Survey of India, the country has lost nearly 250 languages in the last 50 years. The whipping of languages call for serious attention to the state to ensure that linguistic diversity of the country is retrieved. Language development as a part of nationalization mission in India should be more inclusive and representative of all the sections of the society speaking languages and dialects exclusive to their little cultural traditions. Besides, there is a growing concern to understand in the age of globalization how local cultures are being easily absorbed. This is true particularly in the case of English as being a compulsive ally of the new middle class in India. English continues to be a symbol of cultural capitalism in the global world and thereby brings in a new linguistic order combining both globalization and localization of languages. What is imperative is to resist this global hegemony and look for avenues to promote, spread and maintain linguistic heterogeneity, especially in a country like India where language is more than a mere vehicle of communication for the masses. It is more about access over resources, interest and more importantly the right to choose from many. Some of the major challenges for the language debate in India include relationship between language and caste, language and gender and newer forms of linguistic nationalism and conflict, especially those unfolding in northeast part of India. In summary, if we discuss this module language debate in India, we find that what has happened is when language is associated with identity, issues of nationalism. What is important for us to take away from this module is to have an understanding that when language debate is associated with identity, it takes away from this whole idea about language being a unifying factor. Based upon the history about how language in India has been a divisive factor, we need to be very clear about how to understand language debate in India, especially with increasing idea of regionalism in India and increasingly relating livelihood issues, economic issues and political issues to the whole discourse of language. Thank you.